LSU hires Lane Kiffin. All right, the saga is over. Lane Kiffin has made his decision after an insane weekend of will he, won't he, whatever. So we're going to talk about it, break it down today. Josh Pate's the backdrop. I know I'm wearing a gold or yellow sweater, but I want to preface this or preface this, as some of my friends would say, not an LSU fan. All right, I support Tulane, support University of Southern Mississippi. So I'm coming at this from a unbiased. Okay, not a dog in the fight, just as a fan of college football.
Kiffin is the new head coach at LSU. Let's not beat around the bush. It's one of the biggest days in the history of this program. This is a program that anyone this side of Brian Kelly this millennium has won a national championship as the head coach of. Lane Kiffin may very well be the next. This could have gone really sideways. I think we all understand that. Okay, if we just hit the rewind button, about a month. Brian Kelly's out. And the governor's saying one thing, and then we've got an athletic director, and is he going to be permanent? Is he going to be the interim? And there's a whole lot of other competition out there. Florida's job is open. Who knows what the NFL may offer? And Lane Kiffin, by a mile, is the number one candidate in the marketplace. Can LSU get its act together? Well, you know.
Crazy the dominoes that all happened, right? So John Summerall is going to Florida. Virginia Tech hires James Franklin. Penn State somehow is the first person to fire a coach, and yet they're not linked to a single coach. Like Penn State might just not have a coach next year. Who the hell knows? All right, so the dominoes are starting to fall, and LSU and Ole Miss, or LSU and Lane Kiffin, were in a not-so-secret relationship, right? While Lane was in a public relationship with Ole Miss, right? Who's fighting for, at the time, a playoff berth and an SEC championship berth and all that stuff. And we covered this a week or two ago or whenever they had the quote-unquote ultimatum where Ole Miss told Lane, hey, man, you got to figure it out, okay? You got it one way or the other. And once that happened, we said this probably means Lane's going to LSU. Got it right here on the channel. We read the tea leaves or whatever, and this was the worst-kept secret up until that weekend, or this past weekend. Up until this weekend. Because right at the 11th hour, it looked like Lane was waiting for the Iron Bowl to happen. The Iron Bowl had tremendous implications on this, right? The Iron Bowl had, Ole Miss could get into the conference championship game. Then what? Then what do you do? But also, Alabama would have been out if they lose the Iron Bowl. And from what I heard, DeBoer, his seat may have been a little hotter than we all realized if he would have dropped that Iron Bowl game and missed out on the playoffs. So then all of a sudden it's like, well, what if Alabama's a player for Lane? What if that all of a sudden becomes the number one contender in this match? So the world waited for that. Alabama, DeBoer with the Onions goes for it on fourth down. Alabama wins. They're going to the SEC championship game, probably going to the playoffs. DeBoer maybe saves his job. And then, it's basically final. Lane's going to LSU. But then all of a sudden you start hearing about how Lane wants to coach and Carter won't let him coach and which coordinators are staying, which are going, that whole thing. So just an insane. The 30 for 30 on this will be unbelievable.
What LSU got its act together. So to that, I have to hat tip them. And they got the job done, and they landed their slam dunk number one candidate. So the Marty Smith hostage situation sort of masquerading as the LSU coaching search has come to an end. Yeah. Glad to see our guy, Marty Smith, there, our correspondent on the battlefields in Oxford, Mississippi, finally get some much-needed R&R. And one day, we're talking about documentaries about Lane Kiffin. Maybe one day Marty Smith does his own documentary.
Oh, yeah,
about the past 72 to 96 hours of his life that felt like 4 years. It's really hard for me to be consistent emotionally. It has been hard for me to be consistent emotionally throughout this whole thing. I wrote down some words I have felt. Maybe you can compile your own list throughout the duration of LSU pursuing Lane Kiffin.
All right, I know my list.
I felt entertained. I found myself in disbelief. I felt a lot of intrigue. I felt disgust.
Man, okay. I was wondering if he would go this way, so I'll do mine first. I thought it was entertaining as a neutral, just watching this play out. I also thought it was embarrassing for LSU and Ole Miss. I thought it was embarrassing for college football, and I thought it was cringy at the end for Lane Kiffin. I thought the way it all played out was the worst of college sports in 2025, all for the public to see. And watching the dialogue from Ole Miss fans and LSU fans, and the whole thing just made it to where it's like, this is what we did not want to happen with, with how much money's in college sports now and the NIL and the TV deals and all that stuff. Like this was the embarrassing part of the theater for college sports. Now, again, I don't care. Like, I thought it was entertaining, whatever. Doesn't mean it wasn't cringy. Doesn't mean it's not embarrassing.
I felt fatigue. Now we feel finality. There's excitement. There's sadness. I felt all these things. So if you've been out there and you've just been watching this and you felt one emotion throughout this whole thing, are you even alive? Are you a real person? I also am keenly aware that college football is exploding in popularity. So every year, really every month, every week, every day of every year, there's someone new to our sport. And many someones happen to walk in the door of college football in the past month. Or maybe just in the past year, like this fall has been your first real indoctrination into college football. And you look around and say, you can't be serious. This is what this is like. And my answer is, no, most of the time it's not quite like this. But it is amazing, isn't it? Yeah. You guys are waiting for Landman Season 2. And look, I'm hooked on it too. But you have to wait for these series to re-up. And are we even going to get Euphoria season whatever? I don't know. There are rumors of feuding on the set. But I know what I did get. I got Lane Kiffin to LSU, and it was not without casualties, figuratively speaking, because I have talked with many of our friends at Ole Miss. I've seen the footage from the airport. I watched some dude yell an F-bomb towards Chris Kiffin's kid, Cookie, which is unacceptable, by the way, and that kid's like barely old enough to talk, so I don't really know where he's at in this whole thing. I guess he's heading to LSU with everybody else. I know there's a lot of very, very raw, bitter feelings there at Ole Miss.
So, college sports, college football is going through a massive overhaul in every single way. And we see a new iteration of that every single year, whether it's conference realignment, whether it's the addition of the playoffs, whether it's the changing of the playoffs, whether it's the expansion of the playoffs, whether it's rule changes of how seeding works and how they don't work or whatever. To NIL being introduced, to changing NIL, to transfer portal changes, like college football, for being as old and the tradition and the history that it has, is going through a tremendous amount of change of just the infrastructure of how it operates. And I think this is going to be another thing that forces even more change. This is obviously a broken system. This is obviously not how it's supposed to go. And you can argue, well, it's the money, right? A school should not be able to pay 3 coaches at once. One of them a $54 million buyout a week before, handing another one $100 million, while promising a $25 million roster every year, right? The money may be out of control. That's one thought. The other thought is the calendars are messed up. All right. Should the transfer portal be open when it's open? Should coaches be allowed to leave and take new jobs in the middle or end of the season? Should there be tampering rules like in professional sports? Should you have to wait until the end of the season? All of that now is in question. I think all of that will be settled. I think you will see a change in the calendar of when players and coaches and whatever can maneuver and figure things out. In no circumstance do I think the NCAA or whoever's running college sports now, who even knows, in no circumstance do I think they want the head coach of a playoff or the head coach of a team that potentially could be going to the conference championship and then going to the playoffs, chasing a national championship, leaving that team to go coach another team. And then all of a sudden the players are in flux, the school's in flux, everything's in flux, right? It's all about the student athletes, right? So I'm not saying that this is necessarily wrong. You can't blame somebody for taking an opportunity. You can't blame someone for signing a contract that has $100 million attached to it. You can't blame somebody for going after their dream job if that's what this is. You can't blame any of that stuff. I'm not saying that this is, no harm, no foul. He's playing. This all happened within the structure of college football as it is right now. What I'm telling you is that this is going to change college football. I don't blame Bryce Underwood for taking $10 million. I don't blame Quinn Ewers for going to Ohio State for a couple $1 million and then going back to Texas. I don't blame any of these kids or coaches or whatever for making their money. All right? It is what it is. If someone offered me $100 million in the middle of this video, I don't even think I would stop recording. Okay? But this will be an absolute catalyst for a change in how the structure of this works moving forward.
There's no universal truth here. I don't know what else you want me to tell you. Like everyone, when this has been going on, they've been wanting you to pick sides. The Ole Miss folks have wanted you to empathize with them. And the LSU folks have wanted you to say, oh, man, we got to do whatever it takes to land our coach. He can act any way he wants to. That's just part of the fun. It's like, obviously, if the roles were reversed, everyone in Baton Rouge would be saying the things people in Oxford are saying.
Oh, yeah.
And that doesn't absolve you because everyone in Oxford would be saying what my friends down in Baton Rouge are saying right now. And the innocent bystanders, you can just apply all of that to yourselves if you're ever in the market for a coach or your coach ever leaves you because one of...
I think the universal truth is, and I think LSU fans would agree with this, and I think Ole Miss fans would agree with this, is that Ole Miss fans are pissed. They feel left high and dry. They're having their most historic season, and now they're in flux. I would assume the players are probably thinking the same thing. And I think LSU, I would assume the general consensus is, yeah, this is kind of gross, but I don't really care. And I don't blame them. Sure, yeah, it is kind of gross, but you probably shouldn't care. Get your guy. You don't win. You don't get extra points for, whatever, highly ethical decisions in college football or college sports or even pro sports. So that's how I think this all kind of landed. And just like I was saying, from a neutral, just watching the dialogue and watching LSU people on Twitter or whatever, and watching Ole Miss people, and then watching the analysts and watching what Kirk Herbstreit and what they were saying and what Nick Saban was saying, it was all just a little gross. It was all just a little contrived and disingenuous and just kind of, it was what it was, but that is right now college football. It's disingenuous and kind of gross watching the committee try and tap dance their way around, pretending like they are actually trying to put the teams that deserve it on the field, and they're not trying to build storylines or build out the TV show that they're running. It's disingenuous and gross to watch college sports act like they care about the student athletes when they do not, right? But that does not stop us from watching every single Saturday, every single Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whenever a game is on. I'm right there with you. I love it. But it is what it is, and I see it for what it is. And this was a glaring moment of it out in the public for every single person to see. Doesn't make it any less cool, doesn't make it any less fun, doesn't make it any less entertaining, but that, I believe, is the universal truth of the situation.
The most overused adages in sports is fan is short for fanatic. I don't think I've ever said it on the show. It's so old. The first time I heard it 20 years ago, I thought, man, that's edgy. That is brilliant. And then everyone started saying it. However, it is true. So there's a lot of fanaticism here. Any fan base in any of these spots would have felt the same way. Everyone has their take on what really happened. I know that. I know everyone has an opinion. So not only is it enough, or is it not enough rather, to know the truth, and that is very, very soft, very, very much written in shades of gray, depending on who you are here. But everyone has their opinion on whether this was all orchestrated. When did Lane know he was going to go to LSU? Did he just...
Probably the second Brian Kelly got fired. Lane knows I can pick wherever I want to go. He knows what's going on. LSU opens up. He knows they're going to come calling. I'm sure they obviously did pretty quick. And that was it, right? Not hard to figure that one out.
Lead Ole Miss on this whole time. Was he really conflicted? Was he just lying to your face?
Yeah, I think he was... I don't think he was conflicted. I think he did want to coach Ole Miss out. I think that part's true, but I don't think he was ever actually going to turn down LSU. And I don't blame Ole Miss for not letting him coach. I don't blame them at all. I don't blame Lane for wanting to coach and finish out the season, and I don't blame Ole Miss for telling him, yeah, absolutely not. I can for sure see the conflict of interest in there. So again, it's like the only true casualty in this whole thing, metaphorically speaking, of course, like Josh said, are the players. That's it. That is the only true entity that really got screwed here, is the players and the staff that's being left behind at Ole Miss. Because they did everything they should have done. They listened to Lane. They went there. They played hard. They practiced. They did what they had to do to set themselves up to get into the playoffs, to win a national championship. And the captain of their ship left them. And they got to kind of pick this thing up and see how it finishes out for them. But they're the only group that truly didn't have a say in it, didn't have a choice in the matter, and got the short end of the stick.
You don't know. You think you know.
I do
you
know.
don't know.
I'll
share my perspective without
Go
betraying
ahead.
confidence. I talked to Lane a fair amount during this whole ordeal.
I met Lane once. Well, I didn't meet him. I was standing next to him at Rum Runners in Destin. This is back in his Joey Freshwater days. Didn't say a word to him, stood next to him, and we just kind of vibed. But, yeah.
I never once asked him where he was going. Never did that, because I kind of have fun finding out with the rest of you. But talked to him several times. So from my vantage point, I think he was pretty conflicted. That's why I kept coming on the show, and we would do periodic updates about Lane Kiffin and the LSU coaching search and the Florida coaching search, and everyone wanted these definitive statements, and everyone wanted a prediction. And as late as last week, like Brett McMurphy hit us up for a feature he was doing for on3.com about just the general prediction of people in the college football media space. I didn't even text him back. But then Brett, persistent as he is, hit me and said, "Hey, you haven't texted me back yet." So I said, "I guess LSU." I didn't know. Best guess was LSU.
I knew. And we put a video out again 2 weeks ago. You can go watch it. It was, he's going to LSU. The second he met with Carter and they said, yeah, we'll announce it after the Egg Bowl, whatever their official statement was, that official statement might as well have said he is leaving. So the second that statement came out, everyone should have known where he was going.
The point is,
the only thing, like I said at the beginning of this video, the only question was at that 11th hour of, wait a minute, is Alabama actually a player here?
That wasn't just fence riding. It was from talking to him a whole lot.
And I'll give you another prediction. If the Alabama job opens up in the next 5 years, Lane is going to leave LSU and go take that job.
There were just a lot of different perspectives. Okay, so I do think that down the stretch a little bit ago, maybe a couple of days ago, I think it became fairly clear in his mind that he was leaving. And I think that crystallized itself into, if I'm leaving, it's going to be LSU. And then I think the final few days was not so much am I leaving or not. And this is my personal perspective on this. The final few days was, am I going to be able to stick around here and coach?
Yeah, it's what I just said. That's what we said 10 minutes ago. He knew what he was doing the whole time. The question was, can I position this? Can I leverage this to coach? And what do I do? How do we handle that?
And there were a lot of different takes on that too. And I thought yesterday on College Game Day, there were some opinions shared that sounded, pretty universal on that set. And that is, you got to let him coach at Ole Miss. Now, I thought it was laughable.
It is laughable. Anyone who thinks that Ole Miss should have let him coach, a.k.a. Kirk Herbstreit and Nick Saban, it's embarrassing to go out there and say that on College Game Day. It is insane to have that take. I think in no world, I understand Lane wanting to do it, but in no world do you let it happen. And now that we're hearing that Nick Saban told Lane to take the LSU job and was offering him advice and simultaneously is going on College Game Day and advocating for Ole Miss to let him coach, is just another example of the kind of gross, another one of the gross chapters of this thing.
I've always thought the notion of him being able to stick around at Ole Miss and coach as long as he wants to, even though he's taken a job with a rival, was laughable. I told him this.
Yeah, that's
had an
insane.
Argument about it. And our opinions just differ on that.
You can see the conflict of interest from a million different ways, whether it's recruiting players at Ole Miss while coaching Ole Miss, while being the LSU coach. You can see it from business decisions of, well, you know, if I'm coaching LSU next year and Trinidad Chambliss is following me to LSU, do I call certain plays or put a workload on them or whatever? You know, like, I'm not saying that, you know, those are just examples, but, or even the staff, like you're LSU, I mean, you're Ole Miss and you're sitting there and you're like, we've got to put some stuff together. We have to have a conversation with our staff and we got to figure things out. We can't do that as long as Lane's in the building. We don't know what's going to happen. Ole Miss is saying at that point, yeah, sure, whatever. We'll just pause all of what we got going on. We'll pause all of this for a couple of weeks. No problem, brother. You do you. You know, like never, ever, ever, ever was going to happen.
But I looked at it from the vantage point of Keith Carter. You know, the one thing that you can't accuse Lane of being is really, really dishonest. I know that comes as a shock to a lot of people, but he was pretty forthright in what he had been doing the entire time. Whether it be his family going and checking out property down in Gainesville or Baton Rouge the next day and what he was considering and where his mind was. He was pretty communicative with the administration there, as far as I know, the entire time. I think he thought that built up a lot of goodwill. So
I think this was a good old-fashioned pissing contest. I think it was a good old-fashioned who's got the leverage here. And I'll give Carter this. You know, he didn't budge. And he put Ole Miss first in this one, long term. You know, it would not have been hard to imagine somebody saying, I want to win a national championship so bad that I'll let this happen in the short term, you know, or go for one or whatever. But he stood his ground and drew the line in the sand, and he had nothing to lose, right? Like, Lane's leaving. So I think he did what was best for Ole Miss.
That when it came time for him to make a decision, if he hit the exit door, that goodwill and that equity could be cashed in the form of, I get to stick around and coach this team in the playoff as long as our season goes. And I just never thought that was going to happen. I expressed that. So it didn't happen. And anyone who thought that was going to happen, I mean, really genuinely thought that was going to happen, I just ask, why? Why did you ever think that was going to happen? Put yourself not in the shoes of Lane Kiffin or a fan. Yesterday? Put yourself in the shoes of Keith Carter, the athletic director there. Like, why? I could never come up with an answer. I could come up with a lot of answers as to why it wouldn't happen if I were him, why I wouldn't allow it to happen. I think, you know, there was another path where Lane could have said, I'm just not giving you a decision by your deadline. Quick 5-second timeout. Check and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It keeps it free.
Thought I was getting
we
solar
love you.
flared.
All right,
like I was
back to the show.
Cell fighting TN. Damn.
The big questions now that this is in our rearview mirror is not where does Ole Miss go. They snapped their fingers and said, Pete Golding, you're our new head coach.
Which I think was smart. It shows continuity. It shows that, to the committee especially, that, look, we've got coordinators here. The band's still here. Like, don't, you know, whatever. And I think it was smart for Ole Miss to try and retain some of that, keep some of that in the building. I think that was a smart move by them.
Penn State's been wandering in the woods behind our studio for the better part of 2 months trying to.
If you're Penn State, this is as embarrassing as it gets, that you are the first one to fire your coach. You fire James Franklin, and all of a sudden, no one is entertaining Penn State. Like, I haven't heard anybody entertain Penn State. I've just heard people say, I'm not taking the Penn State job. Like, Josh Heupel just came out and said, I'm not taking the Penn State job. Chip Kelly was fired from the Raiders. Stoops was fired from Kentucky. Less than 24 hours, I'm hearing Chip Kelly's going to Kentucky. No one. I have not heard a single person that is even entertaining Penn State. And Penn State's looking around like, damn, there's like 6 jobs that have already been filled. What the hell are we going to do?
Find a coach. Ole Miss executed a coaching search in about 4 hours today. It turns out the replacement was in the building the whole time. So, well, that's that on the front of Ole Miss. Like, congrats, guys, and good luck to Pete Golding, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. But as for Lane at LSU, staff. It's all I ever care about. When coaches are hired, it's all I ever care about. You could do the Tom Fornelli obligatory. I just ripped this from Fornelli. I assume he gets a licensing fee every time I say it. Great hire. No clue whether it'll work out. Now, I have a strong suspicion it's going to work out. And I don't know what his defensive staff is going to look like there. We're live right now, so even as we speak to each other, he's in the building down there. meeting with, among other people, American hero Blake Baker, better known
Word on the street, could be in line for the Tulane job.
to the rest of you as the defensive coordinator at LSU. That guy's one of the best in the business. I also think he may have head coaching offers.
Yeah, like down the street at Tulane.
Because a lot of really good G5 level programs are opening up. So who knows? How does this settle in time is the other thing I wonder. And this is impossible to answer right now. Certainly if I asked anyone in Oxford, Mississippi, he's public enemy number one. He'll never be welcome in this city again. And I'd feel the same way if I were you. It may always be that way. I don't know. My suspicion is there's a lot of this that Lane Kiffin regrets in terms of how it went down. Make no mistake. Make no mistake. He enjoyed a lot of this. You know him. You don't ever have to have spoken to Lane Kiffin a single day.
I think at the end, it got a little long in the tooth. I think in the end, it got a little bit like, man, this is kind of looking bad. You know, like it was fun. It was entertaining. It was cool. And then the last 24-ish hours of it, I think is where it started to get a little old, a little fatigued, like Josh said. I think a little like, man, I mean, this is, you know, like this is, like I said, this is kind of getting cringy. This is just kind of getting weird.
In your life or shared a room with him to know, yeah, that guy kind of leaned into some of this. Of course he did. Of course, I would expect nothing less from him.
Yeah.
I think there are other parts where, of course, you only get to go around the merry-go-round once that he looks back on and says, yeah, I really wish I would have handled this different, that different. There's no fakeness about what they were able to accomplish there over the past 6 years, especially this past year. So you want to remember that fondly. You want to be remembered fondly. You can't walk around talking about valuing the legacy you leave behind, only to blowtorch it on the way out.
Well, I mean, and also, like, I understand Lane was the top candidate, but it's not like he won national championships and SEC championships and all this stuff at Ole Miss. You know, like, as far as a legacy and all that stuff goes, like, yep, fun teams, winning records, good offenses, but, you know.
And not regret a little bit of that. Now, whether you think that's all on you or whether you think that's 20% on you, 80% on them, whatever, okay? In time, the math gets kind of fuzzy on that. The details and people's memories of the details get kind of fuzzy. How do you remember Ole Miss 20 years from now? How does Ole Miss remember you 20 years from now? I don't know. I do know that LSU plays in Oxford, Mississippi next season.
Be a hot ticket.
That's what I do know.
All right, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Quick talk about the Lane Kiffin stuff. I'm sure we'll talk much more about this. Be interesting to see the domino effect in college football after this. I mean, you got to think there's going to be a lot of change with how this all plays out. I think there's going to be a lot of change of the money. I think there's going to be a lot of change as far as like where money comes from, the idea of salary caps or something, but something's got to happen one way or the other. I think the calendar is going to get changed, how transfer portals and these coaching jobs and all this stuff opens up, when they can move, when all that can happen. But yeah, for what it was a wild and crazy couple of days, or really a week. And here we go. But do I think Lane Kiffin is going to be a lifer at LSU? Do I think he's going to be there for 10 years? I wouldn't bet on it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments below. I will see you in the next video.